This is Revolutionizing Recruitment with Kathleen Duffy, the art of attracting, acquiring, and retaining talent. Here's Kathleen.
Welcome back to Revolutionizing Recruitment as I wrap up my conversation with Dr. John Sullivan, the legendary HR thought leader who's written thousands of articles and several books covering all areas of talent management. John, I'd love to get into the effects of the pandemic on recruiting. You recently wrote a piece about loyalty and resilience, and I'm often asked by hiring leaders about what are the things to look for on a resume to help determine loyalty and resilience.
Well, I separate those two. And so if you're looking for, there are people that just stay longer, and you can tell that by the dates in their resume or by the dates on LinkedIn. And so you say, look, they've been at one job and they're over 20 years or two jobs over 20 years. So you look for those kind of things. When you interview them, obviously you want to find out why they stay. What are those sticky factors? So if you have those sticky factors like no commute or work at home, then you're obviously you're going to stay longer at your company. But you have to know the sticky factors first. Why do you stay? And so resumes are tough. Most of it is not true. Everyone leaves out the bad part. No one puts, and I got fired and I deserved it. And so I'm actually not a fan of resumes in that sense. LinkedIn profiles are actually more accurate because your colleagues see it and they know if you're lying, where your resume, most people don't see it. But it's factually true, 66% of resumes, not just minor mistruths, actual lies. And so you have to find other ways, and that's why I want them to be a referral. So one of the reasons why referrals are the best is because you know them. You know they didn't win the Nobel Prize or whatever it is. You know more about their sticky factors. So you get an extra benefit. You get essentially a live reference. So Mary Sue is my employee. They know this person. They can tell me the details. So I'm not against resumes, but most of them just aren't as accurate as having someone who knows them. I also call their references. I call whoever I can to find out, one, are they loyal? Are they going to stay? And the resilience is something different. Show me that you came back from some disaster and your results improved. So not psychologically you came back. That's interesting. But your results improved. And so there are some people that are data-driven that can give you that example. So during interviews, I don't ask them any of the standard interview questions. They're all silly because you know what they are in advance. Tell me about yourself. Yeah, that's a hard one. There's only 4,000 videos on YouTube on how to fool people. And so instead I just say, by the way, LeBron, you're going to have this problem. When we hire you on your desk, you're going to find fighting through injuries. Walk me through the steps of how you'd fight me through injuries. So I don't understand. It's the simplest thing to do. Ask them how they're going to solve a problem, a real problem that's on their desk. And if they don't know how, they don't get you the right steps, don't hire them. But don't ask them, tell me about yourself. They will not tell the truth. And if they're any good, they'll go to Glassdoor, they'll see your interview questions, they'll see the interview answers, and they'll practice until they're perfect. But they won't be good employees. So come on, guys. When you know the questions in advance, it's like a test at college. You can cheat. Most do. And the higher failure rate, again, another data point, almost 50% of new hires fail. Higher percentage of CEOs fail, by the way. So if you don't measure a hiring failure, which is someone who literally you have to let go or fire, you won't realize that, by the way, that BS they told you in the interview is just practice. And the best people practice. Same, by the way, people that get rejected a lot have the best resumes because they're polished, because they've been rejected so many times. So be careful. We did a study. So I used to work for a part of HP. And one of the things I said, I wonder if we're screening out the best people. So I took 5 of our top engineers, changed their name, and changed from HP to Intel. And I submitted them through our screening process. How many of our 5 best engineers would we not even interview? And the answer was 3 out of 5. There's something wrong with screening. There's something wrong when your own best people wouldn't be interviewed. And so the hiring manager looks for people that, one, they don't exist, but they wouldn't be in our team. Most of our team doesn't have any of those qualifications. So you have to, if you overqualify, you're going to hurt diverse people, but you're also going to not hire people that can do this job.
Interesting. Well, we actually featured you in my book around what you've just talked about, because
Right?
a step 4 in our process, in the recruitment research process, is interviewing the candidate. And this is kind of the unbundled piece where it can either be a warm lead vetting out and transitions over to the client and they can get the candidate across the finish line, or we do that deeper dive interview that you talk about. And it's exactly, walk me through. I use that as an illustration in my book as to your recommendations on there. So thank you so much for all of that.
Well, if you're going to hire a cook, you put him in the kitchen. It's just that simple. Well, the kitchen's dangerous, so you say, walk me through the steps, walk me through the recipe, tell me what the likely problems are. So one of the sub questions I said, okay, what might go wrong? And they go, oh, knife might break, et cetera. And so we know from musicians, the famous story, when you hire musicians, 75% of them are men. So this guy at the orchestra wanted to have his son apply. So everybody says, that's not fair. He's your son. So they put everyone behind the screen, and he played the music. Well, that year they hired 75% women. And so you learn that, no, a lot of interviews are biased. We call it unconscious bias, but it's real. And so put them behind the screen. The same with the resume. Take their damn name off. There's no reason you need to know the name of that person. Take the school off like Google does and some other things. And so just put the information you really need, and you're going to find that you won't be fooled as often. So come on, I don't know why. Everyone, even I lie in an interview. If a lie is, I want to tell you what I think you want to hear. If you tell me my weaknesses, will I go, Kathleen, do you have an hour?
I'd need a little bit more than that, John. Well, that kind of brings up the whole, you had another article that we found interesting on the body language and the number one diversity killer. You talk about how not making eye contact could lead to rejecting a candidate whose culture it's never okay, especially for a female, to make eye contact with a male interviewer, right?
Right.
Well, we get a lot of candidates from Mexico for some of our clients here in Arizona, and it's perfectly natural and actually expected for those candidates to add their marital status, their age, their photo, even their number of kids at the top of the resume. And so we were wondering your thoughts on how maybe we can better adapt to others' cultures other than expecting those cultures to adapt to our expectations. I think you call it European white male body language model.
Yes. Well, it's almost like manners. Is it you sit down quietly, you don't play with your cell phone, you look them in the eye. But it turns out there's half the world doesn't do that, and in some cases it's actually anti-culture. So I start with what Google does, which is blinding. I'm not letting anyone who sees this resume see your name. It's a number 4204. If you put down you like crochet, I'm taking that out because women crochet. I take out, literally blind it. You can do it, the software that will do this, so that they're not allowed to see any of that. Now you can do an application form, which automatically leaves all that stuff out, but unfortunately most people resist that. So just taking away that information from the resume. But also, there are companies that literally change the voice, and it's a video interview like ours. They change the voice because you can hear a woman, or you can hear a Mexican accent or something. I don't know. You have to look at all of the discriminatory factor. Why aren't we hiring more people like this? And you just reverse engineer it and go back and say, so the funny thing about the Philharmonic Orchestra, it turned out over time they were still hiring fewer women. Well, it turns out that women wear high heels. I'm not making this up. And when they walk over to the blind audition, the orchestra evaluators could hear the high heels and know it was a woman. So now they take their shoes off.
Interesting.
Both sides. And so you got to be careful. People want to stereotype, but to put all Asians together is just so wrong, or all Mexicans together, or all Latin Americans together. It's so wrong. So you have to force them to say, do I really care about any of this? And by the way, what you did 10 years ago at a company is irrelevant. It's now. What would you do at our company? So that's why it's a completely different question. If I ask you behavioral interview questions, which, because the world has changed, the pandemic has changed, and by the way, everyone knows what they are. When I say, tell me about a time you were a leader, even I can bullshit my way through that one. But guess what? I wasn't a leader. And so you have to say, given this company, given today, how would you handle this problem? And for example, like at Google, if you leave out check with a customer, you don't get hired. And at Google, they have a question generator, but it only generates questions during the interview that fit that job. You can't ask any other questions. And if you have a checklist or scoring sheet, you can make sure that people only score items that are valid predictors and not grades or fit or other things. So you learn over time to look at your failures and say, why am I failing? So you look at the whole funnel. I did this once at Facebook. They say, we're not getting enough women engineers. Like, no, you get a ton of women engineers. They just weren't making it to the hiring phase. And so managers screen them out, don't want to interview them when they see their name. So stop showing the name, just put a number, candidate number 42. And if you have to blind them, it doesn't bother me at all. And have a call where the voice is modulated and no video for the first and maybe second interview, why not?
Interesting. Well, and I probably fit into one of those molds there because for many, many, many years, it was unthinkable to consider a new college grad joining my organization because I thought people needed to have worked in whatever role it was, at least 5 to 10 years before they could come in, that they needed to have some real world experience. And so with the talent shortage, we're looking at a variety of different candidates, and we've probably hired 4 or 5 new college graduates, and they're just knocking it out of the ballpark. So case in point, I've certainly learned that over the last 6 months too.
Well, there are people that just adapt, that just learn. So, LeBron, you couldn't have gotten him now that he's, a professional player, but you might be able to get him as a teenager. And so there's another kind of hiring, which is like, this person fits our company. They're great. They're energetic. They just don't have a lot of experience, but let's find jobs for them because we can capture them. And then as they develop, and we know they're going to develop. So Google started it, I recommend, measure trajectory. So it's not perfect, but say, okay, I'm going to hire John or Kathleen. One of them is going to get promoted twice. One of them is going to quit after 2 weeks. Wouldn't you like to know that as a hiring manager? Because it turns out there are people that are going to get promoted. They're going to move up. They're going to become a leader. We really need leaders. And so why not? Why doesn't someone at the end, we're going to hire Kathleen, but we're going to project her trajectory? Because if we get it right, we're going to treat her differently and we're going to have a valuable hire. And the recruiter should be rewarded. We hired someone that stayed and became a leader, different than we hired someone that stayed a year and quit. That's back to quality of hire or performance of the hire. Not just do they perform in this job, are they good enough to get promoted? Do they make the succession plan? Things like that. So it turns out you can predict. So baseball is really good at this. If you want to have a recruiting model, it's baseball. They project how many more wins we're going to have if we have Kathleen on our team. They predict health, whether the person who's 40 years old is going to get hurt. So we have a lot to learn. Sabermetrics, which are about recruiting talent, are much, much advanced in baseball.
Well, and I think it gets back to your recommendation at the beginning of our conversation around paying attention and staying in touch with those boomerang candidates, because if you do bring them in young and green and groom them, and then they go off and take what you've learned and grown even more, then when you're at another stage of your life, you can contact those individuals again and bring them back into your organization.
I got a call last year from a really large Chinese company, and they said, John, thank you. And I said, what? I had never talked to them. They said, we did our analysis of top performing hires, and sure enough, Boomerangs came in number one. And so, because you're not trying to bring up everyone, you're bringing back LeBron's, the superstars. And then, come on, let's face it, you always thought you'd like to, work at a small startup. So you went, but you hated it. And so sometimes I even call Boomerangs within the first week. And I go, you went to X my hell company. You've been there a week. They lied to you, didn't they? How'd you know, John? Would you like to come back? Because, we use what we call brown grassers. That person used to work there. Now they work for us. Hey, by the way, John, don't trust them. They're lying. But they didn't listen, so they went anyway. And sure enough, they want to come back. So yeah, and there's actually a company that gave them a ticket and said, if you want to come back, call them alumni. It's like, you didn't come back within a month because you're LeBron. And knowing that they can take a job but actually come back gives them more respect for the company. You let me do something. It turned out it was dumb. And now I'll never leave, which, by the way, is what you also find is that Boomerangs never leave again.
Yes, very true.
And they tell everyone, I made a mistake. This is a great place.
Yeah.
And another thing, since you're in the consulting business, they make great referrals. So let's say I'm a recruiter and I want to go into teaching or something where I'm going to be poor. You can't get me back, but you can get me refer you. When someone says, hey, do you need a great recruiter? Oh, Kathleen. And so it turns out if you look at Deloitte and McKinsey, they make a huge amount of money from Boomerangs who they keep in touch with, who don't come back necessarily, but they make business referrals.
Well, again, I think it just gets back to staying in touch and keeping those relationships. It's the bottom line. It's just like any kind of relationship, right?
Yes.
You made a lot of predictions for 2021, and really, they were really spot on, John. One of the things that you commented on was that recruiters and hiring managers should also realize that the power in the recruiting relationship has finally shifted back to the company. But it doesn't appear that that's how things necessarily unfolded this year. It appears that now the candidates are in that power position. Is that what you're seeing in your world up there?
Yes. So that was a mistake in that it did shift for a while, but the huge unemployment benefits, the literal fear of with the variant of dying, coming back to work, the school system, those three factors literally reduced the number of people looking for a job and reduced the number of people that wanted a job. So yeah, the power shifted back to the employee. And you can see that normally you get 250 applicants. Now you might get 20. and so when the power is shifted, you have to shift your strategy. So one, this is important. No one in recruiting has a strategy. They don't have a name for it. Well, what's your recruiting strategy? Hire good people. No, it's what source to use, what assessment source to use, what selling approach to use. So there's the name of a strategy. But that strategy must shift when the power shifts. So the power is the unemployment rate, number of people looking for a job. And so now it turns out in order to get the talent you need, you have to look at employed people who are not looking. So I call them non-lookers, not passive candidates. They're non-lookers. So you go up to them, and how you tell who they're non-lookers, I say, Kathleen, they have a great job, 20% pay increase. And you go, no thanks. But those are the ones you want. Those are the ones that are the best. So it's factually true. The best are working, and they're working across the street at your competitor. When you hire an unemployed person, it doesn't matter. But when you hire LeBron from the Lakers, it matters. You win and they lose. One CEO says, you mean my ship goes up and theirs go down? That's the one I want. So when you say you're on a war footing or you're in a war for talent, you have to fight like a warrior. And a warrior is, I'm going to steal them from the enemy. I'm going to take their best people. And so the number one strategy when the power shifted should be poaching. If you're looking for diversity, so I hear this all the time, not enough diverse candidates. No, if you look at IBM or Sodexo, they have literally tens of thousands of diverse people. All you have to do is poach them or steal them or recruit them. So if you say, among all the unemployed people, who are actively looking, is there a shortage? Yes. But for one company, the answer is just go to Google or IBM, any large company. There are plenty of diverse people, there are plenty of women. You just have to have the capability of rating them. And I find that most recruiters are chicken, be polite. Their managers are even bigger chickens. Well, they might rate us back. It's a war. Of course they're going to rate you back. They're already rating you. So stop looking for unemployed people. Their training is out of date. Maybe no one wants them is not a good sign. But those that are kept, when they try to steal them away or poach them away, their boss bids on them. Those are the ones. It's factually true. The top performers get bid on. The top performers, their boss says, please stay. You have to fight one of their counter offers. So that's how I tell them getting the top talent before they're hired. Their boss is willing to fight for them. And then once I hire them, I just look at the performance. If they're in sales, last year you hired salespeople that sold $1 million. This year we're hiring salespeople that sold $1.2 million. We hired 10 salespeople. That means that recruiting has made the company $1 million by better hiring. So I use a business case, constant business case, one for the executives, but also for the manager. Hey, Mr. Miss Manager, hire someone based on their grades, but they'll end up performing 20% below. Go ahead. And so I'm in their face. After they hire someone, I go back a year later and say, hey, Sullivan guy didn't turn out very well, did he? Told you so.
So, have you started your forecast for 2022 yet? Do you have any spoilers for us?
Yeah, I have. It's going to stay horrible. There are employees that are coming back. So a lot of employees. So I wrote an article on this. A lot of international employees went home. They want to be with their parents. Whatever. So those people are not coming back for this next year, because of immigration. And so it just turns out that there won't be a large number. I'm predicting that the next COVID variant will be even harsher. And so when people are literally afraid to come to work, working at home goes back to being maybe the only option. If you're in, Mississippi, come on, look at the death rates, look at the infection rates. And so unless you require people to have shot, then even that might not be enough. So I'm predicting the talent shortage is going to stay long because of school problems, because people are literally afraid of dying. International people are not coming back. So at least another year. And if this virus is permanent, like cold virus or whatever, then we might never go back to the old way. Because, by the way, we did when I used to work as a chief talent officer, we found that our workers who were 20% more productive when they worked at home. And so it was a major deal for us. The only problem was innovation. It's hard to get innovation. So you look at Apple, Google, Facebook, they all want their employees, Amazon, all want their employees to come in as soon as possible because of innovation. But it turns out there's ways to increase innovation remotely. And so that's what I'm working on now. How do you get people to be innovative when they don't see each other every day? So right now at Google, I would bump into you and say, Kathleen, what are you working on? And when you had nothing, you'd be embarrassed. So you're constantly saying, well, I'm working on this innovation. And so it just turns out serendipitous meetings, which are accidental meetings, cause collaboration, and collaboration causes innovation. So again, being data-driven, when you hire innovative people, you have to put them in an innovative environment. At Apple, that was always show up at work. Google was always show up at work. But now, probably not going to be that way. And then one thing I told Google was like, have you seen your campus? It's a mile across. What are the odds of me physically running into Kathleen? It's almost zero. So assume you have to meet on the phone or computer. Let's find a way to make it happen more often. Let's make it more scientific. And there's a thing on Slack called Donut, which can help schedule meetings and say, you haven't, we literally haven't met, right? We should have met. This is crazy. And if we were at the same company, Kathleen, we would schedule a meeting, even if it's a phone meeting. And so that's the new approach: is you get innovation by showing up. Can't show up anymore. Let's find another way to innovate. Turns out there's some companies that are doing really well. Even one that they play video games every Friday afternoon. Well, it turns out that brings people together, remote people together, and young people. That's what they do. So it brings them together, makes them more collaborative just by playing video games.
Right. Well, we'll look forward to the rest of the forecast for 2022, but I think you're spot on there.
The one thing I've learned in 40 years is it's all about the money. People say they care about people or hiring, but they care about the money. You have to show them what you do brings in tons of money, which, by the way, the second most valuable job at Agilent, where I used to work, was a recruiter. So show them the money, show them the difference, and then make decisions based on data. Stop your gut, stop your assumption. Data leads to money. Money leads to not having your budget cut when the economy goes down. Money allows you to buy technology. So look at Apple. Literally $1.8 million in revenue every employee every year. And the average is 100,000. So they're doing something special. And so I've written several articles. Look at Apple, Microsoft, Google, or Alphabet, Facebook, and Amazon. They're the most valuable companies in the world for a reason. And I'm telling you, between me and you, the secret is not retention, it's recruiting. It's not product development, it's recruiting innovators. So we're the number one. We're the number one issue with CEOs, but we're also the number one solution. And I'm not sure we realize it. And once you use business impact, once you start showing them, I brought in a salesperson that invented the iPod, everyone's going to understand. So follow the money, use data.
And that's why they call him the Michael Jordan of hiring. His name is John Sullivan, and you can find out more about him and read his newsletter at drjohnsullivan.com. John, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you for joining me today.
My pleasure.
And that's it for this episode of Revolutionizing Recruitment. I hope you enjoyed the show. And if you did, make sure to take a second to subscribe so you automatically get my new shows when they drop. Also, if you have a minute, I'd love if you left us a review so more people like yourself can discover the show. Until next time, take care.
This has been Revolutionizing Recruitment with Kathleen Duffy. To connect with Kathleen or to learn more about recruitment research, go to duffygroup.com.